I died. But death wouldn't let me go. Have you ever stopped to think about what happens in the exact moment when everything ends? I'm not talking about religious theories or scientific explanations. I'm talking about that impossible instant when you realize that life after death isn't the end, but the beginning of something you never imagined having to face. Elias woke up expecting to return home, to Helena, to Tomas, to the safe routine that always protected him from the difficult questions. But what he found was a mirror, not the kind that reflects your face, but the kind that reflects your entire soul, without filters, without lies, without excuses. The life after death movie that Hollywood sells is wrong. There are no golden gates or horned demons. There's something much worse and much more liberating at the same time. The truth about who you really were when no one was watching. And Elias was about to discover that some journeys don't end with death. They only begin when there's nowhere left to run. If you've ever felt like you're living on autopilot, ignoring what really matters, this story is for you. Hit the like button, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and subscribe to the channel, because what you're about to discover might completely change the way you see your own life. Elias opened his eyes expecting pain, but found only a thick silence, as if the world had been wrapped in cotton. There was no ground beneath his feet, no sky above his head, only a diffuse luminosity that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Life after death wasn't what the Bible had promised, nor what science denied with such conviction. It was something completely different, a state of expanded consciousness where every thought became visible, every emotion took shape in the air, and time ceased to exist as he had always known it. He brought his hands to his chest, searching for the impact that should be there. The car crash, the shattered glass, Helena's scream. But his body was intact, or at least seemed to be, as if it had been reconstructed by a memory of what it once was. The life after death movie he had always watched on television didn't come close to this. There was no tunnel of light, no white-winged angels, just an uncomfortable sensation that everything he had avoided facing in life now pulsed around him, demanding attention. And then he saw it, floating before him like an impossible object, something that made his non-existent heart race. The camera was old, heavy, the kind his father used to carry on sunny Sundays when Elias was still a child. But it shouldn't be there. Not in that shapeless place, not floating as if it were part of the atmosphere itself. When he extended his hand and touched it, a wave of recognition swept through his entire being. It wasn't just a camera. It was a mirror of the soul, an instrument that revealed what physical eyes could never see. Life after death science tried to explain with neurons and synapses, but this was different. It was as if each object carried a spiritual purpose, a function that transcended matter. He raised the camera to his eyes and looked through the lens, and what he saw made him recoil instinctively. These weren't ordinary images. They were fragments of memories he had buried so deep, he believed they had disappeared forever. Helena's face on the night he chose work instead of her birthday dinner. Tomas's small hands reaching out to him as he ran to catch the bus. His mother's disappointed expression when he lied about being okay. Each silent click of the camera revealed a truth he had spent his entire life avoiding. And now, in that transition plane between worlds, there was no longer any way to escape. The place where Elias found himself had no name, but it had presence, like an empty theater where all plays have been staged and all are still to come. The floor beneath his feet was solid when he needed it to be, and transparent when his mind wavered. The walls breathed with his emotions. When guilt invaded him, everything around darkened like storm clouds. When a sweet memory touched him, rays of golden light pierced through the space. Life after death wasn't a fixed place. He realized now it was a state shaped by consciousness itself, where every feeling became architecture, every thought transformed into landscape. He tried to walk, but realized that movement worked differently there. It was enough to desire being somewhere for the space to reorganize itself around him. It was as if time didn't flow linearly, but existed all at once. Past, present, and future intertwined in a complex tapestry he was only beginning to understand. The life after death movie that Hollywood created always showed clear destinations. Heaven or hell, light or darkness. But this was more subtle, more personal. It was a mirror that reflected back everything he truly was, without filters, without lies. And the more he looked around, the more he realized he wasn't alone in that transition plane. The images the camera revealed didn't come in chronological order. They came in order of pain. Each spiritual photograph that materialized before Elias brought with it the exact weight of the moment when he had failed, lied, or simply turned his back. He saw the day he promised Tomas he would go to the school soccer game and didn't show up, justifying it with a meeting that could have been rescheduled. He saw Helena crying alone in the bathroom after yet another argument about having children, while he pretended to sleep in the next room. The life after death Bible spoke of divine judgment, but what he faced now was far more cruel, the judgment of himself, amplified and impossible to ignore. There was no external judge condemning his choices, only the naked truth of who he had really been when no one was watching. Each avoided decision, each unspoken word, each neglected affection now pulsed like an open wound in his chest. Life after death science tried to reduce consciousness to electrical impulses, but what Elias felt was much deeper. It was as if his soul were being peeled layer by layer, revealing not only his mistakes but the reasons behind each one. The fear of not being enough, pride disguised as ambition, the loneliness he never admitted feeling. And at the center of it all, there was a face he had been avoiding looking at since he arrived there. Tomas was only 8 years old when Elias died, but in the memory fragments the camera revealed, the boy seemed to carry a sadness much greater than his age. He was the living consequence of all of Elias's absences, not just the physical ones, but the emotional ones, those where the body is present but the soul is elsewhere. Each image that emerged was a silent stab. Tomas waiting at the window as night fell and his father didn't return for the promised dinner. Tomas drawing a superhero that looked like Elias, but with a smile the real one never had time to offer. Tomas asking his mother if Daddy didn't like them anymore, and Helena not knowing what to answer. The pain Elias felt now wasn't just regret. It was the devastating understanding that he had wasted something he could never recover. Life after death showed him with cruel clarity that a child's love is like a window that only stays open for a limited time, and he had let his close while chasing ghosts of success and approval. Tomas wasn't just his son. He was the mirror of all the opportunities he ignored, of all the hugs he left for later, of all the I love you words that got stuck in his throat from pride or haste. And now, there in that plane between worlds, Elias needed to face the question he feared most. Was there still time to fix what he had broken, or were some wounds too deep to heal even after death? Helena appeared in the camera lens not as a single image, but as a painful sequence of moments that Elias had let die through neglect. She was there on the day they met, with that shy smile that made him believe in second chances. She was there on the night he proposed under the rain, both soaked and happy as they would never be again. And she was there, too, in all the times the love between them dwindled. Not from lack of feeling, but from lack of presence, attention, conscious choice to truly be beside each other. Life after death wasn't just about judging mistakes. It was about understanding that love needs to be nourished, and he had let theirs starve to death. What hurt most was realizing that Helena never stopped loving him, even when he stopped being present. She continued making coffee the way he liked it. She continued keeping the right side of the bed, even knowing he would arrive too late or too tired to notice. She continued believing that one day he would return to being the man she met, until hope transformed into silent resignation. The Life After Death movie always showed romances interrupted by tragedy, but what Elias faced was worse. A love that died slowly, murdered by 1,000 small omissions. And now, in that space between worlds, he needed to understand that some losses happen long before physical death arrives. It was then that she appeared, not abruptly, but as if she had always been there, just waiting for Elias to be ready to see her. Livia had a serene presence that contrasted with the whirlwind of emotions he felt. There was no judgment in her eyes, only a deep understanding that seemed to pierce through all the layers of pain and guilt he carried. She didn't introduce herself with pomp or elaborate explanations about life after death. She simply extended her hand and said she was there to walk beside him, not to drag or push him, but to remind him that the journey was his and always had been. Livia spoke little, but each word carried the weight of a truth that Elias already knew deep within himself. She didn't bring ready-made answers or magical formulas for absolution. She only showed that everything he needed already dwelt within him, hidden beneath layers of fear and self-deception. Life after death science tried to map with machines and theories, but what Livia revealed was simple. There is no external guide who can do for us the work of looking within and accepting who we truly are. She was merely a gentle mirror, reflecting back the light that Elias had forgotten he possessed, reminding him that the true spiritual journey isn't about running from oneself, but about finally having the courage to meet oneself. The camera began to weigh heavy in Elias's hands, not from physical weight, but from the weight of all the truths it had revealed. He realized that this spiritual object wasn't an instrument of punishment, but of liberation. Each painful image was an invitation to release what he had been carrying for too long. The Life After Death Bible spoke of divine forgiveness, but what Livia showed was even deeper. It wasn't enough to be forgiven by others or by some higher entity. One needed to forgive oneself, accept one's own humanity with all its flaws and imperfections. Elias had spent so much time running from his mistakes that he forgot they were also part of who he was, and that acknowledging them didn't diminish him but completed him. When he finally lowered the camera and looked at Livia, something inside him broke, or perhaps mended. Tears came without warning, carrying with them years of wounded pride, stored regrets, and unexpressed love. He understood that true redemption wasn't about erasing the past or being absolved of his choices, but in accepting them as part of his journey and choosing, from there on, to be different. Life after death wasn't the end of the story, he realized now. It was just the moment when we finally managed to see clearly who we were and who we can still become. And in that instant of total surrender, something extraordinary began to happen around him. When Elias finally forgave himself, the transition plane began to dissolve around him. Not as an ending, but as a transformation. The camera in his hands disappeared, but the clarity it brought remained engraved in every fiber of his being. Livia smiled, not with pity, but with recognition, like someone who sees another finally wake from a long nightmare. Life after death wasn't about punishment or reward, it was about understanding, about accepting that we are made of light and shadow, and that both are necessary to be complete. Now look at your own life. How many conversations are you postponing? How many "I love yous" have gotten stuck in your throat? How many times have you chosen work, pride, fear, instead of being present for those who truly matter? Life after death science may try to explain with neurons and brain chemistry, but deep down you know, the only thing we take with us when everything ends are the moments when we chose to love, forgive, and be truly present. Leave in the comments. If you had a spiritual camera that revealed all the truths you avoid facing, what would it show? What would you change in your life today if you knew tomorrow might never come? If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because every story here is a new chance to start over, to wake up, to choose to be who you can truly be. Death is just a passage, but love is eternal. Remember, you're not here by accident. Every breath is a new opportunity to do things differently. Don't wait to reach the transition plane to realize what truly matters.